Today's episode is how to command respect at work without being the loudest person in the room. There is a lot of people that talk about commanding respect, and the more work that I do with women, especially executive level, it continues to amaze me how many people still aren't commanding the respect that they deserve at work. Now, we can't control patriarchy, the things that have happened in the past around our cultural conditioning, but we certainly can control how we show up. So I want to remind you of that. And I'm curious, have you ever walked out of a meeting wondering why your idea didn't land, even though it was the best one? And this is such a good reminder that respect isn't something people just give you because of your title. It's something they decide in the first few moments of interacting with you. And I would argue even 1/10 of a second, people decide very quickly. And then once they make a decision, then that gets reinforced, or they're suddenly looking for evidence every time you speak for backing up their point of view. So today I'm sharing 7 practical ways to command respect without pretending to be someone you're not, or ultimately faking it. I mean, that doesn't even work anyway. But I know some people try to put on some persona, and maybe sometimes that could work. But what I want to give you are really practical strategies to help you so that you can get that respect that you deserve, and that there isn't any wondering. And there are so many things that I could share around my own personal story around this. The power of being yourself, being certain in who you are, the expertise that you have. And what I see a lot, especially with women, even though it's certainly universal, is the doubt around how we think we are or aren't, or how people are thinking about us, or all the overthinking that we tend to do, rather than feeling certain about who we are, what we stand for, and the expertise that we have. So I wasn't even going to bring this up, but as I'm talking about it, I think it's really important to remind yourself, or to do what I often recommend, which is a celebration portfolio. Take a moment, spend 5 minutes in the next week and write down, just set a timer and write down as many things you can think of that are accomplishments that you have had, even in the last 6 months, because I'm going to guess you have a lot of them. And the other thing that I wanted to say, so first of all, write those down so you see the evidence, because what you're doing is you are showing data that, hey, yes, I deserve to be here. I belong in this room. In fact, I would get out a Post-it right now and write down, I belong in this room. That is a beautiful thing to remind yourself of, because all of this lends itself to things that you can say to yourself and ways that you can continue to create that evidence for yourself to realize I am worthy and deserving of commanding the respect that I deserve. And yet we want to make sure that we're not doing anything that might be getting in our way of that. So here are my 7 tips. Number 1 is speak first. Don't wait until everyone else has shared their opinion. When you consistently go last, here's what you do. And this was me, by the way. You unintentionally train people to see you as a follower rather than a contributor. Make sure that in those first few seconds, when perhaps the one person leading the meeting says who wants to kick it off, that you go first or be one of the first few voices. There's such an opportune time. The real estate in that few moments is so powerful, because most people don't jump at the opportunity. There's usually a good 10 to 15 seconds that goes by before somebody will say, oh, well, I'll start. And then you've lost the opportunity. Now, obviously, you can still speak up, but get yourself trained to say it first or sooner than later. And you don't have to have the perfect answer. It could be as simple as, I'd like to start with an observation, or here's what I'm seeing, or I'd like to offer my perspective. Very, very simple things. That is one of my best and favorite tips. Number 2 is to stop explaining everything. We have a tendency to explain, over-explain, give too much detail, ramble around. And one of the fastest ways to lose authority is by over-explaining. It is a very unfortunate thing because the more you justify every decision, the more it sounds like you're asking for permission. And you want to replace lengthy explanations with confidence. So instead of, let's just take this as an example. I just thought maybe this could work because instead, try this. Based on the data, this is my recommendation. It's such a different feel. In fact, I did an Instagram reel just this week on what to say instead of I think. So, for example, instead of saying, again, this is a minimizing term, like I think this is a good idea, or I think we should do this, say I recommend, or my perspective is, or like I said a minute ago, based on the data, this is my recommendation. So this is also one thing that I used to do, just way too much information. And I remember getting feedback on it. It wasn't even at work, but it was part of a leadership group that I was in. I remember the facilitator, because I said we would have these monthly meetings in person. And so I remember the facilitator, or I had asked at the meeting in person, hey, I didn't get any responses to the email. Did people get it? And one guy just honestly said, Karen, your emails, I hate to say this, but they're so long, I just tune out. And he was very honest. And the facilitator said, I'm tracking with you, Karen, but I will say, and now this is obviously getting deep, but he said it feels like it's a little girl who's just trying to say everything so that her dad will give her attention. This was obviously a much deeper group that was therapeutic as well as leadership, but it was such a good learning for me because I thought, yeah, I don't want people to tune out. I don't want them to stop listening. So how do you get people to listen and lean in? You say less. And when you speak with authority and conviction. So those are simple tips that can truly make a massive difference and completely change the trajectory of your career or your business. So let's talk about number 3. Be clear before you're clever. One of my favorite people is Donald Miller. If you have listened to me for very long, you will know that he is my mentor. He is the owner and founder of Story Brand. And he talks a lot about not confusing people. And a lot of times people want to put these fancy words on things and it's not relatable. So if people don't use, what does he always say? If people don't necessarily buy the best product or service, they buy the one they can understand. I'll say that again because it's so powerful. People don't necessarily buy the best product or service, or if we translate this to any of you might be looking for a job or in a career, people don't often pick the best candidate. They pick the best communicator. They pick the best product or service that they can understand. So make sure that you're clear and plain spoken. This relates back to tips of, first of all, people respect leaders they can understand. And bottom line up front, bluff from the US military. That's a great reminder. Get that lead of the story up front. Start with your recommendation and then explain why. People don't need the details first. Just what's the recommendation? And remember, like I mentioned earlier around certainty, it's very similar. Clarity earns credibility. So be clear before you're clever. Number 4, hold your boundaries. Oh gosh, this is one that I'm almost embarrassed to say how much work I have done on boundaries. Respect isn't built by saying yes to everything. This is how I used to be at work. Oh my gosh, I was such a yes person, always wanting to make sure I would do what I thought my boss wanted and what would make her happy, what she would want to do. And I'll tell you, that was not a confident way to live. Let's put it that way. And remember that confidence is built by honoring your priorities. So I want to go back to, I keep thinking about that job now because what I remember so vividly there is that there was a woman who spoke up a lot and often almost argumentatively to my boss. And it was the president of the company, and the two of us peers we both reported to the president of the company. And this peer would speak up a lot, and she would, again, borderline argumentative with her opinions. And I finally asked her, I had so much almost fear and admiration combined about this person. And I asked her, I pulled her aside one day and I said, what was it like growing up in your home? And she said, oh, we debated all the time at the dinner table. And I thought, wow, that was the exact opposite of my household. Everything was around, making sure that my dad was happy and that we didn't rile him or anything like that. And we definitely weren't encouraged to speak up and give our opinions. So very fascinating to see how different childhoods relate to how we show up. So I am a big proponent of therapy, and I would highly recommend that if that is something that you feel called to, it is such a powerful way to grow in both your personal life as well as in your business or career. Okay, so let's look at what this might sound like. Okay, honoring your priorities could sound like this. I can't take that on this week, or I'm happy to help after this deadline, or here's what works for me, here's what doesn't. It all goes back to clarity. And when you explain yourself, you don't always have to explain yourself, but I'm thinking about some work situations where it might feel strange to say, well, I'm not available for that, or that's not my job. You won't be perceived as a very good team member that way. But it is very helpful to say, hey, here are all the things that I have on my plate. Or you don't even have to go into detail, but you could say, I have a ton on my plate this week, but next week I could do that on Tuesday morning. Would that work for you? So you're asking a question to be collaborative and give them agency to respond, but you're being really clear about what works for you and what doesn't. So remember that boundaries teach people how to treat you. Very, very, very powerful and important. And I would even suggest, if you want to try this on this week, notice when you immediately say yes to things, as opposed to first. Here's what my suggestion would be. In the next week, anytime you're asked to do something, in your mind, say no first and see how that feels. Then decide, what do I actually want to do? I also recommend you do not respond immediately to emails. Think about it. And if somebody asks you verbally in a text or in a text or a voice message or something, or in front of your face, then simply say, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Or let me think about that. I'll get back to you. Is tomorrow okay? Does that work for you? Again, you're not asking for permission. You're doing that as a courtesy. That's why you're asking that question. Number 5, stop filling every silence. Many professionals rush to fill awkward pauses. We then make our voice go faster, and then we can sound nervous, and it makes us come across with less control and command. So make sure that you don't ask questions in a way that you're constantly, or excuse me, let me back up there. Let me hold on a second here. I lost my notes. Okay. Many professionals, yes, we try to rush. We don't sound like we're under control. So first thing I want to say is the way audiences, or ultimately, let's say people, whether it's a big audience or a small audience, people will respond to your energy. So if you're rushing, you're trying to fill spots and say something, they will feel that. You will come across as less certain, less in control, and less calm. When you have those pauses, people feel differently around you. They feel like you're leading them and taking them somewhere. So confident leaders don't explain everything. They ask the question and then wait. Or they make a point and then they stop. Silence communicates certainty. And the first person who speaks, this is going to sound like I've contradicted what I said earlier, but it doesn't mean that they're always the one that's most respected. Sometimes it's the person who knows when not to speak. So this all requires judgment. So let me make the point here that everything I'm talking about is all about, they're great tips. I stand by my tips, but I also want to say that when you are in the actual situation, you need to be the judge. And this is where common sense overrides everything. What is the best situation or the best way to respond in the actual situation at hand? I want to take a quick moment here to say that I am starting a new group coaching cohort, the Powerhouse, starting sometime in October. If you are interested in speaking with more confidence with a small group of people and want to command the room, speak on whether it's a big stage or a small stage, presenting in a conference room, and feeling successful in high stakes moments, I would love to have a conversation with you to see if that is something that might be a fit. So shout me out. Send me an email, Karen@KarenLaos.com, or you can text me at 415-602-0558 and let me know you're interested. You can simply say the Powerhouse. That is my group cohort. And it's also on my website under the Work With Me tab. It has the Powerhouse. I would love to talk to you about whether that would be a fit for you. And then I also wanted to remind you to please do a review when you have a moment if this podcast has given value to you. In the last week, I got 3 people. This was so fun. It just warmed my heart. One woman said, I had to get an MRI, and she said, I thought that you would appreciate this. When they asked me, the nurse or the staff asked me, what do you want to listen to while you're in the tube? She said, Karen's podcast. So that was really fun. And another person recently got a promotion from the tips that I've shared on the podcast. So that is so incredibly humbling to me and it gives me so much joy. And I too hope that you are getting something out of this podcast. So let's come back. I've got 2 more tips for you. Number 6, make your words match your presence. Your body often speaks before you do. In fact, I talk about powerhouse presence. That is the result of what you get when working with me. And that is what I stand for. The confidence cocktail is the recipe to help us get to powerhouse presence. A big part of this is simply shoulders back, standing tall, maintaining steady eye contact. A calm presence signals confidence long before your first sentence. And I mentioned it earlier, but there is about 1/10 of a second that we get before people make a decision about us. And a huge part of that is simply in how we come across. So remember, before you walk into any room or you walk into any Zoom room or Teams room, smile and think, I am the most confident person in the room, and have your shoulders back, walk in and like you own the place, like you belong there. That will totally shift how you come across with your energy. Number 7, this is our last tip today. Keep your word. Nothing builds respect faster than consistency. If you say you'll do something, do it. I will tell you, there have been times where I have said I was going to do something and I didn't do it. I will tell you, this is something that I continue to work on. There are so many competing priorities that we all have to deal with. And yet when you say you're going to do something, do it. There is so much research around the lack of follow-up in corporate America. It's amazing, or people in business. So just remember, communicate early if something changes. If you aren't going to be able to make something, just say it in advance. Half of life is communicating expectations. And I will say that reliability alone is one of the most overlooked forms of executive presence. It's amazing how, just like consistency and reliability, people need to know that they can count on you. And if they can't, then trust starts eroding. So remember the power of speaking with that clarity, keeping your word, and making sure that you communicate if you can't make it to something that you said you could do, or if you have to change the deadline. It's so much better to do that in advance than going back and realizing, oh, I forgot that. I mean, you can still go back, of course, and apologize, but the first person that I would recommend that you focus on consistency around and keeping your word to is yourself. When is the last time that you put something on your calendar for yourself and then you didn't follow through? Maybe it was a workout, a yoga class, I don't know, reading a book or something like that. And you said, oh no, I'll do that later. I will tell you, I'm so guilty of that. And I've been working on it diligently. One of the simplest things that I did in January is I started making my bed every day. I didn't do that consistently. And it feels so good. I never thought that that would give me so much joy and peace. And the simple act of doing it every day, people often talk about that. Make your bed, you'll feel accomplished. I never really understood that until I actually practiced it. Okay, let's review. 7 ways to command respect at work without being the loudest person in the room. Number 1, speak first. 2, stop explaining everything. 3, be clear before you're clever. 4, hold your boundaries. 5, stop filling every silence. 6, make your words match your presence. And 7, keep your word. So my closing challenge to you is pick one of these habits and work on it. So in the next week, speak first at a meeting. Just start there. See what that does for you. Consistency, keep your word to yourself. Take 10 minutes or 5 even in the next week and write down all of the things that you've accomplished over the last 6 months. These things will all help you to move forward to that commanding respect. And you'll also remember I have a book out there called Trust Your Own Voice, and it is a guidebook for women on how to grow your influence through confident communication. So give those things a try, and you will also have more confidence, especially in those high stakes situations. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.